Basic information about the three countries. The Nigerian Civil War was the earliest, and then Liberia, which had two phases. The time between the phases was very short, just a year. And the Sierra Leone Civil War. And you can see the devastating statistics in terms of the numbers of people killed, the people displaced, and the sexualized violence against women. And by the way, Liberia has the dubious distinction of being the only country created by the U.S. by formerly enslaved Africans. In the 18th century. Combat. I'll be talking about women's involvement in combat, in livelihoods, and women's activism in this next section. In the Nigerian Civil War, there were really no known women on the federal side. It's highly masculine institution. On the Biafran side, there's not much information about no information about numbers, but what we know about the women is that they were among the civil defense forces, and they did so out of a commitment to the cause or after they witnessed their family members being killed or close kin. They were expected to perform support and servicing roles, and very few received military training. In Sierra Leone and Liberia, they're very similar. 25 to 50% of the fighters have been estimated to be women and girls. The vast majority of the women and girls in the fighting forces reported abduction or forced recruitment. They received some military weapons and training from their commander or captor husbands, in quotes. They performed roles such as cooks, caring for the sick, some of the typical reproductive functions, as well as operating as spies, communication technicians, workers, forced workers in diamond mines. Livelihood. Farming within and across borders under hazardous and unstable conditions. Working in mining areas that utilize forced labor in the arduous extraction of diamonds in the case of Sierra Leone, and engaging in high-risk trading that involves smuggling by collaborating with and bribing border police and customs officials. And they traded with various armed forces. Their entrepreneurship was based on complicated relationships with sets of cross-border and ethnic business partners that demanded extraordinary strategizing. Activism. There's little evidence that when in Nigeria, women engaged in organized peace activism. But in the post-war period, women mobilized independently, later joining forces with other pro-democracy movements to protect against military rule. As you know, Nigeria was followed by 30 years of military rule after the end of the Civil War. The 90s movement for women in politics has grown, and Women's Political Summit. Okay, yeah. Basically, in the other two countries, there was a way in which women exercised their strategic agency to organize movements, and the kind of livelihood activities that I spoke about are examples of tactic agency, that is doing something more immediately to take care of some of the reproductive functions they were responsible for. But later, the development of peace activism has become examples of strategic agency. And in the paper, you can get all the different names. I guess the point I'd like to end with is talking about a feminist redefinition of security. And the question becomes whose security and who is trying to secure what for whom in the prevailing discourse on national security. And militarized security is profoundly gendered and is absolutely not secure for women. Genuine security, from our view, is based on a respect for human life. It requires a comprehensive process of demilitarization. And demilitarization will require no less than the transformation of the patriarchal gender relations. One effective way of achieving this is to strengthen women's movements in militarized zones. And I'll end here. Thank you.
Professor Habashi, do you have a PowerPoint? PowerPoint? Okay. 感谢李安山教授讲非洲和中国的合作情况，和 Margo 讲的国家主义和安全情况。我们现在有Mamdouh Habashi先生 Arab African Research Center，他的题目